I'm just gonna start going here. So um, here is the Minotaur character. I'm gonna leave him in the scene for scale. The point today is to try to start building up a scene. This is kind of going to be where the characters live, so eventually they'll have like a nice little town of tents and stuff set up. For now, we're going to start off general by adding the ground topography. So we're going to add some mountains in the distance, and then we'll have probably a couple separate pieces of land. Some are close, some are far away, and then we'll add some plants and stuff to the close ground so that it adds a lot of extra detail. And then we'll take the ground into Substance Painter and try to get some nice realistic soil and rock materials. So what we'll be using is I have one of these packs linked, but it's the CG Geek Nature Essentials pack. It's $20. I went and bought that, and then I bought the tree pack and converted the trees to assets so that I can bring them into the scene. And then I'm going to be using a free add-on called GScatter, which makes a nice, easy way to scatter plants, rocks, other materials onto a plane or a floor. So we'll do that a little bit later, but first we'll just start adding some general land. And I'm gonna start off by hiding some of the objects in the scene, just so we're not making it too full. Okay. So in Blender, there's a really cool feature. You can just add a preset ground, basically. But I probably have to enable it in the add-ons first. I don't think I have that yet. So I'll go find that. I'll go to Preferences, Add-ons. And then I need to remember what it's called. It's this Add Mesh ANT landscape. And it's part of Blender. You don't have to download it. You just have to enable it. So I'll go ahead and turn that on, and I'll save my preferences. And then I'll close out. So now if I come back up to Add in Object Mode, I can just go to Mesh, and there's this option down here for Landscape. So I need to decide what collection to put it in. So I think I'll start a new collection, and we'll just call it Ground Objects. And then what we'll have to do is when we use GScatter later, I think it kind of reorders where the ground goes, but that's fine. We don't need to worry about that right now. So I'll minimize the end panel here a little bit. Okay, so with my ground objects collection selected, I'm going to add mesh landscape. Now it starts off really small. That's fine. I'll kind of pick a general shape that I like, and then we'll start working on scaling it up. So if you look under the presets, there's a ton of different preset options here. So let's just pick a cool one like dunes. So it just makes some kind of like sandy hills. And then we want something that's kind of like a big flat plain with mountains in the background. So let's maybe look at, let's see what large terrain is. That one's probably a little too bumpy. I really want to use just like one mountain in the background in a few spots. That one, I think the mountain takes up too much space. So really for the first renders I'm going to do, we're not going to need to have the mountains be really visible, because they'll be in the background and it'll be a dark scene, so you probably won't even see them. But let's try mountain 2. That one's more flat. That's probably more what we want. We're going to scale this up really large, and then the character's camp is probably going to be just in one little side of the kind of the flat plane. More of VFX is here. Hello, welcome to the stream. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Although if you couldn't, I suppose you wouldn't be able to tell me because you didn't hear that. So I think everything's running fine though. Whoever's in here, let me know if you can hear me, I guess. I had issues with audio last time. Okay. Yes, can hear me. All right, sweet. Sounds good. Summermain says we can hear you. Good, good. All right. So I think this is a good shape. Now, there is an option. I kind of want to just tile this one time. I just don't remember where that is. But if I do that, it'll create like a low spot between the two areas of mountains, and that's where the tent will be set up. So that's kind of what I want to try to go for. Oh, that'll work too. Let's just make the mesh size in one direction larger, and that'll create some kind of low areas, like right in this region is kind of what we're going for. So now, the tricky part with this is that I always lose this menu. Landscape tools. All right, so we want to keep that. Regenerate. Yeah, so as soon as you click off of that thing, it gets rid of it. So it's kind of tricky to use. But let's just add the same one again. Mesh landscape, and it's kept the setting I changed, so that's no big deal. And then we just need to scale the entire thing. So I think this is actually a good enough shape. I'll use this and we'll just make it massive. So I'm just going to click off, and we'll just call this main ground. And then we'll just know that this is kind of the entire area. So I want to put the characters in this valley here. So I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. I'm going to set the location to 0 in the Z, and then I'm just going to scale this thing up like real big. And then I think we'll keep the characters at the center of the world. So I'll move the topology to make that happen. Let's keep scaling this up just a little more, and then I'm going to move it in the Y. And they don't really have to be mountains per se. I just want some kind of more interesting objects in the background. And then what I'll do once we get some materials on this, we'll come back in and maybe duplicate it so that it'll have the same sort of style. And then I could put extra ones like off to the side and scale them up, move them around just to make it look a little bit more interesting. But I think this is going to be a good starting point. So they're just going to kind of have their little setup in this valley here. And you can see that, so his feet are at 0. So I want to move the entire landscape down so that where their feet are would be close to the ground level. That's going to be a little tricky with how big this object is, but that's going to be pretty close. I'll have to move them around and pose them anyway. And then we'll end up working on this mesh over time, because I'll probably like add a little stream in there and we'll have a bunch of different materials with rock and stuff around where the tent goes, things like that. So it'll be kind of a work in progress as we go, but for now I'm going to save the file. Let's go into render preview here. So here's the character. Obviously the ground does not have a material yet, so I'm going to give it one quick just so that it doesn't look so whitewashed. And let's just give it kind of a red color. Turn the roughness up, the specular down. Okay. Then we can just kind of see what we're looking at. So for the first renders, we're going to have a little campfire scene set up here. They'll just kind of be sitting on like a log or something, and then you'll see all these hills in the background. So I think let's move this up one more time, and we're just going to go really slow. So I'm going to hold the shift key when I move it, because that'll make the increments that it moves a lot smaller. And now you can see the floor is really close to his feet. That'll just make it a little easier for us to work with it later. And I think actually this is Blender 3.6. I still haven't updated because I know the shaders changed. Otherwise I'll probably upgrade to Blender 4.1 when that's ready. They have a way to snap objects to the ground that you're using, so that'll be really nice to have, but they don't have that in 3.6 yet. So I think first things first, let's plan out our scene just a little bit. So I'm just going to start bringing in some of these branches, and it'll kind of help represent the campfire. And I don't know what they look like, so I'm just going to have to bring some in and see what they are. So these are instanced, they're assets. They're marked as assets. So they're basically like instances of an object in the scene. So if I drag one in, it'll just add one copy of it. And you can see this is kind of just a little tiny stick. But these have all of their materials set up. So if I scale this up a little bit, they've got materials, they've got different configurations that you can load here. Let's just try a different one. Okay, so they're just pre-made assets that you can drag right into the scene. And I think we can also pick how detailed these things are. But honestly, they'll probably be fine for what we're going to do, because they're just going to be on fire anyway. So I'll just start to kind of move these around. So now what's cool about GScatter is I can select these assets, and I'll do it with grass here in a second. But you can select these assets and then have GScatter scatter them around the plane that is your floor. And you can also weight paint areas on the floor, and that will control where the grass goes and how dense it is and stuff like that. So when it's time for grass, we'll do that. For now, I'm just going to bring in single assets for the fire. And then I'll get a few more sticks, and then there's some rocks in here that I can also bring in to make like a little fire ring. So you can scatter the objects all over the place kind of procedurally, or you can just drag one in at a time and work with them however you want to. So I'm going to switch back to, let's go to viewport shading. I think that's going to perform quite a bit better here. And I'm just going to move these things so that they're in kind of a nice little pile. And I'll bring a bunch of different ones in here. See if we can find a... I And you can just manipulate these like any other object. You can scale them certain directions. Just to make this look like it's a little bit of a pile here. I think we already have that one, so I'll take that one out. When you have so many different ones to pick, you might as well just use different ones so that people's eyes don't catch repeated patterns. All right. Okay, so this will just kind of represent like a bunch of different branches that they could have found in the area. I think that one needs to come down a little. And then, yeah, at the very end of this process, it'll be kind of fun to work with fire simulations again. I haven't done it for a long time, and I'm curious to see how this new CPU will handle it. Yeah, let's rotate that. Sticks don't normally float. Okay, cool. So we've got a little pile of sticks. I'm going to bring in some rocks real fast to make the ring. And there's only 4 rocks in here, but you know, you could easily go and grab assets from anywhere. You can get free ones. There's plenty of them, like Substance Painter has some you can download, and then you can paint them in Substance. So I'm just going to start adding some of these. And these ones are pretty large, so I'll scale them down, and I'll just kind of bury them so they don't look as obnoxious. And I'll bring just a few in. And then the trick with this kind of stuff is it's not procedural, so you're going to have, you know, clear copies of the same objects. So what you want to do is just rotate them up and down and in different directions, because people won't be able to tell they're the same. So I'll get just a couple of these things set up, and then I'll just duplicate, move, and rotate them from there. So I'll put another one of these maybe over here. Then let's bring in a new one. This one's a real big one. So let's scale that down. Let's move it, let's rotate it. All right, and obviously none of this matters, you know, how you do it. So just kind of have fun, and let's, oops. So see here, I'll rotate that one upside down, and now you won't be able to find a repeated piece. And I'll do the same with this one, because that's kind of a big one. Rotate it by Y. Move it up. Yeah. So it's a little bit tedious, but you know, it's a lot faster than modeling all of this stuff. So I went and bought these material packs simply because for $30 total for these objects, it saved me literally probably hundreds of hours making them, especially the plants, because when we get into showing you what they look like with shaders turned on, it's absolutely ridiculous how high quality they are. So, you know, spending that much time to scan these things and work with the models and stuff is just not worth it for me. If you like doing it, then feel free, but I don't have time for that at this point, so I went ahead and took the easy way out on this one. So I'm just going to keep moving these. You can scale them down a little bit. Let's see, we need one of those. Okay. Got a little bit lazier there. Just wanted to kind of fill up this little spot here, but that should look fine. And then let's rotate this stick so it looks like it's sitting on the side there of the rock. That's pretty cool. I just don't want the sticks to be clipping into the rocks because that's kind of obvious that something's wrong, so I'll move them around a little bit. All right, that looks pretty cool. And then in Substance Painter, we'll mark this part of the floor as a different material, so it's easier to apply a little bit of like a gravel underneath of it. Okay. So let's go to shader preview mode and see what this thing looks like. I'm going to save this again because I really don't want it to crash after all of that. All right. Now let's add, you know what, we'll do that later. I was going to add a collection for all of the rocks and sticks and stuff, but we'll clean up the scene later if we need to. So I kind of want to show you how awesome the plants are. So I think I'm going to start doing a little bit of GScatter. So the first thing to know is if you use GScatter or any other like particle system, you're going to have a whole bunch of data use unless you are instancing properly. So GScatter does instance properly, but we don't need plants all the way up on the hills here. So I'm going to weight paint an area for the grass to grow. That'll be close to the camera. Everything back behind there will just have like a hill material that's applied. So let's go ahead and work on the weight paint first. So I'll show you the mesh. So when you weight paint this, you're only going to be able to weight paint where there's a vertex. So if I go to edit mode, that's anywhere there's a point. So if I want a really smooth weight paint in this area, I'm going to have to subdivide this mesh. So I'm going to select all, and I'm just going to subdivide it once because I don't really want to add tons and tons of polys to this. It's really not too bad yet. It's only 65,000, but we don't have to get that specific. But just know if you're trying to weight paint and it's not looking right, it's probably just because your object doesn't have enough detail in it. So we'll go back to object mode, and now I'm just going to paint grass in this area, basically around where the camera would be, and then we'll add a couple trees and stuff like that. So I'll show you GScatter here in a second, but I'm going to select the plane, go to the vertex groups, and I'm going to add one, and we'll call this grass group. And then with that selected, I can go into weight paint mode. So I have a weight of 1 set and a strength of 1. So anywhere that I paint this is where the grass will be. So I'll just kind of randomly add patches in the general area. Definitely want to have a lot like at the edges of where the focal point will be. I'd rather have the ground more grassy than less, I guess. I'll just have some little patches in the middle. And the beauty of software like GScatter and even particle systems is that you can come back in at any time and edit this. So in the next renders, if they have a tent set up over here, we'll just come in and remove the grass, basically. So we have a lot of options for basically non-destructive workflows, so you're not going to have to come in and redo your entire scene just because you had grass everywhere and don't want it anymore. So now I'm going to do just kind of a nice wide sweep around the far edges. And then, like I said, way up on the hill, we don't need all the grass because you won't be able to see it anyway. And it'll just slow everything down for no gain. So let's go back to object mode. So now that weight group is saved in this vertex group. Now all I have to do is open up the GScatter menu here in the end panel. And then I highlight an asset. So I'm going to start off with just a basic grass. I'd say let's make them taller ones. So we'll do this grass asset 2. So then all I have to do is select it. In the GScatter panel here, I'm going to use the eyedropper to select the main ground. And then I'm going to, with my grass object selected, I'm going to click scatter. It'll take just a second. Now, it didn't apply the weight group, and that's because we haven't told it to. So I'm going to scroll down here just a little bit. There's a lot of settings in here, and I haven't even used them all yet to see what they do, but I do know we want to be under this settings options here. We want to have distribution highlighted, and then pull down this tab to add effect layer. And I want to, basically we're under distribution, so I want to distribute by weight mask. And then see, I've selected that, nothing happened. That's because we have to select the weight map. So if you look right in here, it's got this little icon here. It's asking me for a vertex group. And you can see if I click in there, grass group is the only option. And there it is. So the grass is now applied. So let's look at it with some realistic material. And I'll zoom in on one of these here real close. So my lighting is coming from the top left of the screen, but you can see how like all the blades of grass pass light through. They have really good shadowing inside of the groups, and they're just so high quality compared to whatever I was going to model myself. So I'm glad I bought this, because this is one thing that you need in a scene like this, and I was not going to get a good product myself, you know, not with the amount of time I wanted to spend. So if you like making grass and trees and plants, then by all means go do that, but that isn't my goal here. Edgar the Face says, hey, hello, welcome. Glad you can make it. I know it's always weird with the timing for you, so I'm glad you're here. But yeah, we're just adding some grass and plants to the scene, and then we'll come back and get our ground materials here set up in a bit. So, all right, now I really want this grass to be more covered on everything, and we'll also add some like some moss here in a second, but I just want to show you. So these are really far apart and they're not very big. So one thing I can do is scale these, and this will just make the grass larger, which I do want to do that because the character is relatively large. So I want to make sure the grass kind of looks like it's to scale, and I want it to be sort of taller, kind of like grassland stuff, not short grass or not wetland grass. So I'll turn the scale up maybe even just a little bit more. And then under distribution, I can also increase the density. So I really want, it doesn't have to be super dense, but let's try that. Because keep in mind, we'll come back and add another scatter that has smaller grass, and then there's like some options for moss and leaves and stuff on the ground. So we'll play with those a little bit, but you can see there's like this small grass asset. I'm going to try some of those and see what they do. There's also cut grass. Seedy grass, that's kind of cool. So maybe let's take this density down just a little more. And then, because right now it's kind of going to look like more of an arid area where there's not, like it'd be sandy. I don't want it to be sandy looking, so we do have to add quite a bit more plants. So let's see what the seedy grass looks like. I'm going to grab this one. And I still have the plane selected, so I'm just going to say scatter selected. It's going to take a second. Now again, this is going to put the grass everywhere on this entire object. And it's running slow because I'm in render mode, so I need to get back into something else. Let's just go to material preview here. Let it load the shaders here. One thing I've learned about Blender is if it's loading, just sit there, don't touch anything. Definitely don't want to crash it for no reason. All right, it's doing something here. So now that added way too much grass, but we also don't want the grass to go up the hill. You know, that's the same problem with this one. So I have the ground selected still. I'm going to go back to solid view mode here, and we are going to add a new vertex group that shows these kind of other kinds of grass. And I'm just going to put a few in the close area to the character. We're not going to put nearly as many. So let's add a new vertex group. I'll call this one, let's call it seedy grass. And just to kind of keep the naming similar to the assets so that I don't get confused what's what. And we'll go into weight paint. All right, now this shouldn't run too slow. But if you are noticing that it's slowing down, you can disable your object in the viewport, and that should help it run faster. So I'm just gonna draw a couple spots of these. So I think what's interesting is it's good to pay attention to how plants interact in reality, because realistically, if you go look at an area, you're not going to have just a completely uniform distribution of plants. They're going to be mixed in. There's going to be patches of certain kinds, and you want to think about the topology. So if they're going up the mountain, there's going to be less and less plants, and you know, that kind of thing. So it's probably good just to also have some reference images open if you really want to target like a specific type of you know, here really it's not necessarily going to match anything realistic. I'm just trying to make it interesting. So all right, I'm going to go back. We'll call that good. So this is the seedy grass group. So I have the second one. I need to pull this out more. Okay, yeah, so the grass seedy asset is selected. We're going to go back to distribution. I'm going to add that effect layer for weight mask. We're going to select seedy grass group. And now all of a sudden everything runs well again because our grass is not put on the entire mesh everywhere. So these ones I want to be quite a bit bigger. I'm going to go to scale and just bring them up a lot. Okay, so now we've got two types of grass. The only other one I'm going to add is some like low-lying stuff. Maybe this cut grass or these small grass. So I'm going to do that real quick. But we'll go ahead and add our vertex group here before we scatter this. And then we don't have to deal with it running slow. So one more weight paint. Now this one is going to be all over the place. Probably we'll just have it basically everywhere. And then we'll play with the density if we want to decrease it in the area of the fire. So most of this probably won't be in the render. but we'll want to use it to kind of taper off the look of the foliage and have it get less and less further away. So we might come back and play with our vertex group later just to see how everything looks, but let's start with that for now. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select, let's try this small grass asset, this one here, and we'll scatter it. I'm not sure what kind of plant this is yet, but we'll see. And it looks like it just makes these little maybe crabgrass kind of things. So let's see what the cut grass looks like. So let's I'm going to select the small grass asset we just made and just hit this minus. That deletes it. And then I'm going to just to see, we're going to see what the cut grass looks like. So that just kind of makes like sort of a long grass. All right, I think we'll pick the other one. So I took that one off again. All right, and yeah, and like I said, I haven't played around with these enough yet, so some of these I haven't even seen yet. But let's do this one. It looks a little wider. We'll scatter it, and then we'll go right to add our weight mask distribution for the small grass group. And so that'll keep it just closer to where we're at. All right, and then I want this density to be significantly higher. This is going to just kind of be all over the place. And I really don't want the scale to be large. So let's just try to type in a number because this is running a little slow. So we'll type in 50. All right. And let's see what this looks like with some shaders. Now this is probably going to take just a little bit to load. There are a lot of assets. Close the in panel here. Okay. So my scene lighting is definitely too bright, obviously. I'm going to, let's actually turn off the world here and see what we have. Okay. This is going to help a little bit because we'll actually be able to kind of see what, you know, like moonlight is going to do. All right, now I am noticing this is running pretty slow. So when we start posing the character and setting up other objects, I will probably disable a bunch of these in the viewport. So if I select these and go to the GScatter menu, they have an option in there for disabling assets in the viewport. So here you can see how many it's saying there are. It looks like we have 1.2 million of the small grass objects already. So that's obviously going to be kind of a lot to deal with. What is going on there? Oh, I must have had the side of the panel grabbed. So pull that back over. Okay. I'm going to select the small grass because that is the one that's giving us the most problem. And we can see the distribution. I think it's good. The rest of it will probably do. We'll probably do with just the material on the ground for now. And then I am going to come in here and set the viewport display on these bad boys to like I don't know, 5%. And we'll just have to remember that there's plenty more of them. The funny thing is, I'm still only using, well, only, I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I'm only using 10 gigs of VRAM, so theoretically I'd still be able to render this on a lot of my machines, which is good news. But even though the viewport is running slow, and it's really probably mostly because I'm in shaded mode, it's still workable, and we're still at a usable VRAM amount. Mora VFX says you should make a live using Bagapie add-on. I think that I'd like it. What is it? What's it for? I have not heard of that. I'm definitely always interested in seeing new add-ons and stuff. Honestly, what happened this week was I tried to get some environments from Daz 3D, and they were so hard to import that I gave up on it for now. So yeah, if what'd you call it, Bagapie add-on, if that is for environments, that's definitely something that I need more of. All right, I'm gonna scale these grass objects up just a little bit too. All right. So I think that'll be a good starting point. I do want to add just a couple trees. I think that's probably going to help us out here a little. Eventually, so instead of adding trees that are 3D for the background, I'll probably come in and add just like images of trees. Mora VFX says Bagapie is architecture and vegetation, rocks, and trees. I used it also. It's recommended. Popo Ramos, welcome. Popo Ramos also has used Bagapie. Yeah, well, I will look into it. Do you guys remember what it costs, just to tell people? If you guys recommend it, I'll probably still get it anyway. But I know people are always asking about the prices for add-ons. All right, I'm gonna pull in a couple trees for kind of in the near distance, and then we'll scatter just a little bit of dead leaves and stuff, and maybe some moss right around the campfire area here. But let's pick a tree. I have 4 trees currently. I have ash trees, maple, pine trees. Let's throw some pine trees in. Where'd that go? There it is. Okay, so now I can actually scatter pine trees with GScatter, which is really cool, because once it's marked as an asset, then you can easily scatter the object. So this one didn't come with the add-on, and it did not come in the same pack as all this grass, but I marked it as an asset just so I could scatter it. So I think that's really cool. But and honestly, I don't know if I want to scatter it, because I don't think we probably need that many. The other thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to set the viewport display down on some of my other grass here, because these are just a little bit slow. There we go. I can definitely still feel the lag, but it's nowhere near as bad. So, all right. So let's plan our scene a little, because there's no reason to add trees that we're not going to see anyway. So let's go into our camera. So I picture this kind of mountain in the background. Let's go to a widescreen as well. Let's just say 2560 by 1440 for the frame size. The reason I want to start to set up the camera now is because if you don't plan your frames from the beginning, you're probably going to work on things outside of the frame too much. So eventually I'll want this entire environment to be usable, But for the first few renders, I'm just going to get them in, get it set up, and see what it looks like. So even like all these plants that are outside of the frame here probably don't need to be there right now. But let's just go ahead and start planning. So I think this first render, you'll kind of see the silhouette of the mountain. They'll be sitting there at the fire. So we'll need a little bit of space for like a log on the side. They'll kind of be sitting there, and then it'll either be looking over his shoulder or down at him. So something like this is probably going to be okay. So if I'm going to put in some trees, I'll probably just put them kind of partly up the hill, maybe one or two closer toward the hill itself. So I just want to plan where I'm going to put these things before I start to add even more objects. So basically we're gonna add some over here. So now another good point is there's no reason to have this much of the mountain behind here, but I'm thinking that since it doesn't have materials or anything yet, it's probably not hurting anything, but eventually I can come cut that off if I need to. But we'll see. Just depends on how we're going to use the scene. So I'm just going to grab a couple pine trees in. Let's go to the top view here. And so the camera's facing this way. I want to shoot toward the hill, so I'm going to have just a couple trees in this area. So I'm just going to drag a couple on here. Now, these are not controlled by the GScatter, so I'll still have to manipulate them like you would with any normal object in Blender. But we'll be able to tell what these are going to look like. So like that one's going to be out of the frame probably. So I'll just take that one out. And then let's actually just drag one right up here. Yeah, we can do it that way. And then I'm going to scale this one down a little. Scale this one down a little. And then I'll just rotate some. I don't think, yeah, this won't lock to the plane. So you have to kind of think about how you're going to place it. Rotate it about its Z. Scale it down. I just want to add some extra interest to the scene. Poporemo says, just looked it up. We're talking about the Bag of Pie add-on. It has 3 tiers, free $39 and $93. And the difference is the amount of assets. Okay, cool. Yep, thank you for looking into that. I'll definitely check it out. Okay. Anything you can do to save yourself tons of time is worth it in the long run. I know a lot of people use Blender because they don't want to spend money, but you know, sometimes you're just gonna add a lot of work for yourself if you won't buy anything. Okay. Kind of like the idea of adding some trees close to the scene as well. Maybe just a couple that kind of create an edge for the render frame. Whoops. So let's maybe do that. And we'll just kind of rotate it around. That should look pretty cool. And then I'll add just a couple way up on top and scale them down. That should help them look like they're pretty small. Just kind of look like we have a little pine tree forest up there. That should be pretty cool. All right. I'm going to save this. And at risk of blowing everything up, I'm going to check out what it looks like. All right. Now keep in mind we have a bunch of our grass turned off. So when we add that back in, it'll look a little different. But let's man, those trees look pretty good though. Those are from an older asset pack. That's also from CG Geek. So I was wondering if the materials would look as good, but I think they'll look nice. So yeah, so somewhere in this direction is where the camera's going to be facing. I can move it around a little. I can still move trees if I want to, but I think showing that hill behind him and then maybe the moon kind of halfway onto the frame in that direction is the goal here. So I'll get out of the camera for now. I think the next thing we should do is add some sort of a soil material to the ground, because everything will look really nice except we don't have a real material on the floor, so it's going to just look weird. So the one thing we have to worry about is we're not going to remember where on this big plane is, you know, where we want this rock pile. So we can either have soil under it and not worry about it. I can add some gravel stuff later. They may even have gravel in this texture pack here. I'm not sure if they do though. So if we want to add in extra material under our firing in Substance Painter, we need to mark that out with a separate material. Otherwise we won't know where it is. But I think we'll get away with just adding some soil material for now. So let's go see. I know in Substance Painter there aren't as many large-scale options, if you will, versus some other apps. So we'll just have to see what it kind of looks like, but I'll save this for now. Now our ground just has this basic ground 1 material. One thing we have to do before I go to Substance Painter here is I have to UV unwrap this. If you don't, Substance Painter will unwrap it, and then the UVs won't match when you bring the material back in. So now this one, it's just going to be basically a big rectangle anyway. So it'll take it just a second, but I mean, there you go. It's just a really, really dense rectangle. So what we're going to have to try to do is use a very high resolution soil material, or we're going to have to tile it a lot. And we'll just have to see how that goes. Because obviously with tiling, you'll see repeated patterns. So we'll have to try to do some scaling, and hopefully maybe our grass will just break it up enough you won't be able to see that. So this thing has a material. If you wanted a separate one, you'd have to add a material to just these vertices here, or to these faces underneath the rocks, but I think it'll be fine. And then you have to UV unwrap, and that's all you need to export to Substance. So I'll save this one more time. More VFX says, in 2016, I started with Cinema 4D, and in 2020, I switched to Blender. And what I didn't learn in Cinema 4D, I learned in Blender. So was Cinema 4D just easier to use, so that like Blender forced you to learn more? Is that what you mean? Because I haven't used Cinema 4D itself. I've just used their benchmarking tools. I am going to export this. So I'm going to export so I have just the plane selected, our main ground object. I'm going to export as an FBX. And it's in our campsite file here. I'm just going to say selected objects, mesh, take off the animation bake. None of this other stuff will matter. And we'll call this the main ground object. And I'll export that. And we're not using up too much RAM or anything, so I'll just open Substance without closing Blender. So here is the launcher. We'll open up Painter. Take us just a second. Maybe. I don't think I missed. All right. Oh yeah, I see it. It's trying to open. Okay, so it opened it twice. So I'll just close one of those. And here we go. All right. So I'm just going to go to New. I have the Blender template. I'm not sure that that matters too much. Let's go into the scenes, campsite. I'll grab the main ground object and open that. Document resolution, we're going to crank it up to 4K. All right. I think everything else will be fine. We don't have maps baked or anything like that, so I'll hit OK. Oh, Mora VFX says Blender is more intuitive. Okay, well that's cool. I know a lot of people say that Blender is hard to learn, but it's good to hear from somebody that's used other apps that that it's more intuitive. That's good. And I'm sure over the years, Blender has improved a lot, because I know a lot of people say the old versions were not really that good, as far as being intuitive, at least. But all right, so all I really want to do here is I want to get a either a rock texture or sand or dirt or something, just to make our ground look like it's good. I think whatever's in the far background, so up on the side of the hill here, is not really going to matter. So we could really do whatever we want. But I have a ton of rock and soil materials that we can pick from. So generally, I would prefer to put rock on the top part of the hills, and then just kind of have the soil at the bottom. But we'll see what we can come up with. So I don't think I want it to be too rough. So let's just try this sandstone and see what it looks like. So I can just drag this right onto the ground. And the problem that you'll see is this rock looks like the scale is nowhere near what it needs to be. And so if I come in here, I can delete this empty layer. If I come in here and I tile this, pretty soon your eye will start to catch repeated patterns. So the first thing I see is the banding. So there's this kind of gray line, and it's repeated over and over. As far as I know, in Substance, there's no way to get rid of that. But what we can do is we can rely on our materials in the scene and some other rotation tricks and stuff, and we can also paint on top of this with the same material, and that'll kind of mask it. So I think this won't be too bad, because keep in mind our character will be set up right around here. We'll have the hill visible, but there's not going to be too much exposed ground that we can actually see the material for. So I'd say right now this is looking decent. Let's look at Blender, because I don't remember if he's on this side or on this side. So let's see, because one of them is flatter than the other. Okay, yeah, so he is on the flatter side. So he's over here. So the reason I am wondering is because I want to add another layer that is some soil, and I'm thinking maybe we should use this mossy ground I have. maybe try this one. It's called Dirt and Mossy Ground. So I'm going to select that one for our paint layer. And I just want to hit some of the areas down around where we know we'll see the ground. So now you can kind of see how this applies. I don't know if we want it to be quite as green as that. So maybe let's just try to make this a little bit more brown. I think that'll look okay. Poparamo says, I bought the CG Fast Track course, and it really sped up my learning on Blender. They have a free course on YouTube. That's a great start. I was sold after that. And then, and their paid content did not disappoint. Awesome. Is that CG Fast Track? Is that the channel? I know I've heard that before. Is that CG Geek? I don't remember. Okay. So I'm going to apply this material all over the place. And hopefully that doesn't cause too many issues. Actually, I think it is, though, because we're adding too much bumpiness. So, you know what? This one it's fine enough. I don't think it'll be a problem. So let's actually make our brush size really small. And I'm just going to paint this all over the place. And we can make it maybe a little bigger than that. But I just want this open area where the character sits to kind of have like a green sort of mossy look to it. We want it to look like soil more than just rock. So I'm going to paint it on there. Not CG Geek. Look them up after. Okay, I didn't know if you meant that was one of their paid. Exactly what it is. I haven't done a lot with paid courses yet. Okay. So I am just going to paint some of this green up and around. So I think this won't be too bad. It's just going to help break up the ground a little. We'll have to see if we really don't like this material, then we can come back in and add additional soil materials just in the close proximity to the fire. But I think this will be okay. We'll just have to see what it looks like. Actually, let's add just a little more on this front face. Maybe some random little spots. The first renders I'm planning are going to be in the dark anyway. I don't think it'll matter. So, all right. We'll try that. We'll see what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and export the textures. And for some reason, every single time I have to reselect the place I want to go. I'm going to make a new folder under our campsite scene for, we need to be careful here. Ground, object, materials. And then I'll just select that folder. Looks like everything's good enough to go there, so I'll export. And once this says it's done, we can just close out. I will save the file so that we don't have to come back in and restart later. Let's go back to our scenes. Ground, object, substance, file. Okay, there, so that we can restart with this one if we want to. So I'll close that. Now back in Blender, my floor is still selected. I'm going to go to shading. Okay. Now, to do this, you have to have the not Node Wrangler add-on enabled, which also comes with Blender. And all I'm going to do to load all the materials we just created for that plane is I'm going to select the shader here. I need to turn on my screencast here. Looks like I don't have it reloaded yet. I just got a new computer, so I haven't reloaded everything. It's been a couple weeks of trying to find all the things I forgot about, but I'm going to hit Control, Shift, and T, and it's gonna take me into my menus, and what it's going to do is just look for shader information. So when we exported the materials from Substance, all it did was make well, alpha, base color, displacement, emission, metallic, normal, and roughness maps. And that will tell the plane based on our UV map what it should look like. So I'm just going to select all of these. And then when I click this Principled Texture Setup button, it's going to automatically build the nodes here for the shader. And it's going to fill them right into that original ground 1 material, so we don't have to mess with that anymore. Now the big question is, do we like the ground? So I'm going to go back to rendered preview here, and we'll check it out. So what you'll see is, and this is what I was talking about, this ground is definitely much lower resolution than our other objects, so it probably wouldn't matter, but if you zoom in on these rocks, these are relatively high quality, and then our ground just kind of looks like some sort of random flat color. So the reason that is because our material was stretched too far. I think it'll look fine. So if we go back to our camera, and let's actually get out of shading mode, let's go to layout, let's go to our camera, pull up render preview again. If we look at this, we're going to have a lot more dense foliage, but also anywhere up here, this material looks just fine. I don't think that is going to be a problem for these renders, especially these first ones in the dark. What I really want is to bring in some Megascans data, so I'll have to figure out how to deal with Unreal Engine to get some of these environments. And honestly, I'd like to learn that to do environment work eventually anyway. I'm going to zoom the camera in just a little more. And then, but I don't think these materials up the hill are going to matter, especially for a render in the dark. And then all I'll really do is probably make one extra set of material here that is significantly higher resolution, because it just doesn't look like anything. Now, the one thing that might help us is we do have to enable the displacement, because I'm not sure it's actually showing it. So I'm under the material settings for the plane, or for the ground, and it's the surface is set to bump only. So I'm going to switch that to displacement and bump, because sometimes when you bring in materials from Substance, it won't look right without turning those on. So let's zoom in here, and you can see it added a little bit of like bumpiness to the ground, but we've definitely got some weird shading stuff going on. So I'm going to go back to the shading tab, and one thing I've learned about materials from Substance is, for some reason, I have to come down here and turn down the displacement scale occasionally. So if you set it to 0, it'll make everything completely flat. But if you set it to 1, and it's especially bad on character materials like skin with bumpiness and stuff, something like 0.1 on displacement is actually normally better. And then sometimes turning the normal map setting down can help too, although I think this one looks like it's loading okay. So that's one thing to note, is you may have to play with these displacement settings a little bit. So, all right. So I think it's definitely a good start. Yeah, I just don't like how non-specific the ground looks. So like from up here, um, you know, with our plants in the scene and stuff, it probably wouldn't really look too bad. And if we zoom in on the rock material, from just a little ways back, that looks pretty good too. So I think we just need to add a little bit more specific soil material right in this area here. So what I'll do, we don't have to redo this entire thing. So I'll just open Substance Painter up again. And if I reopen my file, it'll look exactly like it did. And then we'll just erase that that mossy soil material that we tried to paint on. And we'll just start over with some more specific dirt. But that's always the problem, unless you're using like a mega scan, which is just one image for the entire scene. It's really hard to deal with tiling and stuff, and there's workarounds, but it's all very manual. Let's go back to our scene here. This is the ground object substance file, so we'll open that. Okay. So what we really want to do is somewhere in here we just want better soil. So this paint layer that we added this green is the one that's selected. I'm going to come over here to the eraser, and I'm going to just take off this entire general area. And really, if we wanted to, we could probably just tile this rock more. And I'm tempted to just try that. So the rock material is a smart material, so I can just mess with it here without having to do anything else. So I can just scale this up. Obviously, we've got kind of this repeated pattern issue. We won't see it anywhere else, so I think I'm just going to add my my paint on top. So I don't mind this mossy stuff everywhere else. I just don't want it real close to the character, so I'm going to add a new paint layer, and we'll find a better soil. Pine needle covered rocky forest soil. That looks like that might be a good one. What else would we have? I think we'll try that one. So I'll select that one. Oh, we're still set on the eraser. That's why it won't let me select the material. Now we're good to go. So let's just see what that looks like. Okay, so that'll look pretty cool, but I have to change the brush size down a lot. Oh, and the other thing we can do too is if we wanted to, we could mask out the rock in this area, but let's maybe just see what it looks like first. See, I don't think we're going to get specific enough because these materials are going to conflict. So let's try to add a mask. Oop. We want to let's remove the mask. I want to add a white mask. Yeah. So I think what this will do is this will take off the rock from this part, and basically it should just kind of erase this material. The reason I have to do this is because the rock material is not painted on. It's just applied as like a smart material. So now I think when I go back here, I should be able to paint just this. Yeah, so now I can paint just this material here. All right. Now let's see if we can get this to look a little bit better. So I want this to follow the path. Let's turn the height range down just a little. I don't want it to look too bumpy. It's a pretty cool little material, though. I don't necessarily want it to look like he's sitting in like jagged rocky area, but I'm thinking this material is probably going to look better. So I'm going to start off by just covering this whole spot, and then we'll work on trying to get it to look a little bit cleaner here in a second. So obviously this looks very repetitive. If I keep painting, it's not overwriting it, it's just adding to it. So if you zoom in on here, it just looks kind of like confused. Let's turn our height position down more and see if it makes it look a little less bumpy. It should be just a bit. So now here's the problem. So if I set my brush size really high to cover this whole area at once, it will only like basically tile this one time. So you can kind of see it's applying just a really big, wide, like snapshot of the brush just one time. All right. Now I think, yeah, so this looks too repetitive still. So the problem is I really want to use, let's remove that. Let's start a new one. And wonder if I can get some, let's try this one. I just want to play around with these for a little bit just to see. I'm not sure this one has the detail that we need. Yeah, so see if I paint this really big, you can kind of see they're supposed to be leaves, but when they're this large of scale, they're not going to look right. Okay, let's, I wonder if we can get this to tile better. Let's remove that. Let's make it a paint mask or a fill layer instead. And then we'll add a black mask to this one. Okay, I think I did that the right direction. So now if I do that, I should be able to bring... Nope. Fill layer. If I'm trying to add a mask that tells it only to fill where I'm basically telling it to. I don't know that that's the proper workflow for that. So I guess I'll just take it off for now. Okay. Let's just try a couple more of these. So there's some other grass ones. But that's the biggest problem. And I always have this in really big scenes in Substance Painter, is trying to get materials that actually look decent at any sort of large scale. think this one doesn't look too bad. And some of these probably just won't look too bad anyway on their own. But I think I'll come back later and set up little vertex groups to add separate material for the immediate area, because it's easier to fill if you have your groups kind of set up. So I'm just going to come in here and repaint on top of this again, and that'll kind of help fade it out at the edges, hopefully get rid of some of the repetitiveness. And it'll help it look just a little bit more like grassy stuff, but we'll go with that for now. So I'm going to export this one last time. It's not exactly what I want, but I think it'll be fine because we have plenty of plants. So I'm going to export the textures. So it's got the right file because we have the save, but I'm going to go in here and get rid of these materials that we saved last time, and then just re-export these. And I think we're good. So I'll close Substance. I'll save the file, close the launcher. Okay, so now we need to select the plane, go back to shading mode, and let's see if we like this any better or not. But basically, all I have to do is delete these shaders that it made last time. Or these nodes, sorry. And then just re-add the new data by Control plus Shift plus T. And again, that's only with Node Wrangler enabled. And then I'm going to select all of these and hit Principled Texture Setup. It'll bring them in and load them. Okay, let's see, where's our cursor at here? Yep, see, in this, I think we kind of have the same issue here again, but we'll leave it for now because this one's going to be in the dark anyway. But you can still see there's this kind of just low res look to it. So I think the next time I'll apply more rock material further away, just in a small circle here, and then really close there will be a really high resolution soil. So I know doing this in Unreal Engine would help a lot too, but I'm going to set those normal and displacement settings down just a little so that it doesn't look quite as obnoxious. So displacement I'll put to 0.1. The way you can tell if it's a problem is, so if I set displacement up to 1, the surface of the mesh won't match where the material is showing it if it's way out of whack. So the displacement that Substance sends is not supposed to be very big. Sometimes it'll come in with like character skin will be like a foot off of their body. So sometimes you just have to watch for that, and that can cause some of these little weird shadow patches on the ground. So if I go to 0.1, we may or may not see that get any better. Let's zoom in here. And you can play with the normal as well, because I know that will affect it. And I'm not entirely sure why, but I think it's just something with how Substance exports the textures. It just doesn't read the information completely properly. So think let's try our displacement back up to 1 once. Yeah, and you can clearly see if I look at his feet, there's a nice gap in here. If I put the displacement to 0, the gap is gone. So that displacement is the issue. It just scales way too high. So I don't think it's giving us anything. So I'm just going to call it 0, and mid-level we should be able to call 0 too. I could just disconnect the node, but either way it's not going to matter. So this just gives us a little bit of material in the front. We'll scatter some leaves around here and stuff too, so that'll look cool, but I think for now that's okay. If this is our camera view here, we're not going to see too much of the ground. I just wanted there to be some sort of material on the background. All right. So I'm going to save this. We'll leave the camera mode. I'm going to turn on the world. Let's set our sun low. And then I'm going to rotate it so it's kind of behind the scene. There, I think it needs to come up a little higher though. And then, yeah, so we'll have a little campfire here, and then we'll also have like a bunch of fog. I think will be another cool touch. Sun elevation still needs to be higher. And so we'll kind of have, it won't be nearly this bright, but let's try like a 0.1 for the intensity, and then the strength, we'll make like a 0.1. So there's just a little bit of lighting coming from behind, maybe a little higher on that, and then I can play with some of the dust and ozone settings here to make the color different. I think high ozone makes it really blue. So we'll have that. Obviously, we'll have an actual dome in here instead of just the HDRI viewport shading settings here. So I'll have to go get a really good nighttime sky. Popo Ramos says, I come across this issue creating realistic-ish environments in Blender. It's a fight between the right scale and patterns appearing. My solution is to scatter a bunch of things to hide the pattern. That's the only thing I found. That is the only thing I found to deal with that issue. So what we're talking about is this material just doesn't look right, but if you make it a small enough scale so that it's very detailed, you can easily see that it's repeated. And it's a common issue with texturing. The only bulletproof way to get around it is to have a mega scan, which is literally the entire topography scanned in with photos, but those files are just massive. And I think that's kind of how DAZ Studios environments go a lot, which they look nice, they're just hard to work with. You know, stuff like that. So they're hard to deal with, and basically you have to deal with tiling or you have to deal with massive files. But turn it into night and add volumetric fog. That is what I'm planning on doing. So he'll basically be sitting with the moon kind of off in the distance, like over here. And so you'll get a little bit of that God ray effect and hopefully some cool shadows from the trees. And then we'll have a little fire going that'll add light from basically between the camera and the character. So should be a cool little scene. Obviously, it's going to take me a bit of time to set up the fire and stuff too, but yeah, it should be pretty cool. Eventually what I'll have, and it may or may not be this exact scene. I don't see why it couldn't be, but I'm going to build an entire camp where I'll have multiple like little tents and a couple fire sites and stuff like that for you know, almost where all of the characters live in like this little town of tents. So that's kind of the direction it'll head eventually. And then one of the first renders I'm actually going to do is to replace my channel banner, so that I have a really old one. You can't really tell what it is. It's just kind of a dark one, but it's the big widescreen on the channel information at the top of my page. So I really want to make a new one of those. And this will replace that. So I think that'll be fun. But let's turn up all of these scattered objects to 100% view. Are you planning on animating this, or is it for a still? Yes. Once I get the environment to a point that I like it, which I probably shouldn't put that condition on because I will never make the animation. But once I'm happy with some sort of environment for it, I will be doing all kinds of animations. So, yeah, this character is completely ready to go with animations, and he's got the full body like fur system and stuff I built a couple weeks ago. So ultimately, yeah, there will be all kinds of animations. I don't know if I'll end up sticking with cycles or not, because the texture is okay. It definitely doesn't look like it's hairy. It's just kind of like skin, but rendering images with these characters and fully realistic hair on them is just awful. I mean, like 3 to 8 minutes per frame with the 4090. So animation, definitely. I don't know what style it'll be yet. Still kind of deciding, but yeah. So this will be like the little home base. So eventually this will be where all the characters live together. And I'll probably start making some just cool little short videos that are little kind of like relaxing scenes or something. Try to work on learning some audio editing and stuff like that, because I haven't done a lot of it. So I spent so much time learning how to make my characters. I really haven't spent a lot of time building scenes yet. So this is kind of one of the first runs of getting somewhat of a scene together that I've done. That's why I want to learn Unreal Engine for that, but that's a new can of worms. But yeah, once you get into Blender and you're comfortable with one part, you realize how many of the other parts that you haven't even started on. So it's a little daunting having to come in and like, you know, how do I do sounds? How do I do some sort of voicing and that kind of stuff? But that's the fun of it. I mean, it's better than just, I guess, mastering it and then being done and saying, well, there's nothing else to do. Popo Ramos says, yes, I feel you on that. I sometimes export things to Unreal to try to optimize Eevee. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, and I've got characters into Unreal before, just not with my rigs. So if I can learn how to get the rigs to come in properly, then yeah. I would probably do a lot more of this stuff just entirely in Unreal, but I do like Blender's animation tools. I don't have any complaints about it. So all right, I think what I'm going to do right at the moment is I'm going to start to scatter some extra objects. So one that I really want is I want to put some of these like little leaf piles, kind of dead moss, dead leaf stuff, into the middle of the fire ring. So I'm going to grab this guy. Let's see, let's make sure we have it selected. Main ground is selected. I'm going to add a new vertex group for, what should we call it? We'll just call it fire ring. And then I'm going to go white paint. Bring this up, and I just want to put this around the fire ring. So yeah, here's the issue that I was talking about. Our plane is not subdivided enough. to like paint specifically here, because we're painting on vertexes, not on not freely on the faces. So this will be fine because I want the stuff to be kind of just all around here. But yeah, we'll see what it looks like. So let's go back to object mode. We'll open up our GScatter here. And then I'm going to select, I don't know, this one looks good. And then I'll say scatter. And first thing, I'm going to come down here, weight mask, and we'll add the fire ring mask. So I think these things are tiny. So let's try to scale them up. Maybe let's leave them a little smaller than that, and then we'll just distribute a ton more of them. See what that looks like. Poparemo says, I do mainly VFX work, green screen actors on CG environments, so my animation needs are minimal or easy. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's cool. I have done 0 VFX so far. So someday I'd like to kind of learn how to do some of that, but yeah, I would say for now my focus is entirely not VFX. Not that I don't want to. Scale these up just a little more. Oh, that's going to be too tall. So I'm going to scale this stuff down in the Z to a 0.1, maybe? If I could land on an actual solid amount. All right, I'll just type it in. I don't know why I'm bothering. There we go. Turn off our overlays. Wow, that actually worked really good. Look at that. So we just have kind of a nice little pile of leaves around the fire. Sweet. Yeah, I would really like to try some motion capture, because even with these characters that I have, if you look at the rig, it's virtually the same as the human meta rigs. Well, from basically the neck down, and then it has a tail added, but retargeting the bones for the legs is no big deal because it's the same number of bones in the chain. So I think it'd be really easy to deal with a human, animation data. So that would be pretty interesting to try to see how that would convert. But all right. So I think we have, let's go ahead and let's turn on everything just for a render. So I'm gonna, let's see. I'm just gonna have him standing there for now. I don't even know what lights we have, but let's just start this thing up. Okay. So I'm gonna go into the characters collection. I'm gonna turn on, he has a fur system on his clothes, and then he's got a whole bunch of them on his body, which if you were here, I think a couple of you guys were actually here for it. We added all of these fur systems one night. If I can find it. There he is. So I'm going to turn all these on. I guess I don't really necessarily need these in the viewport. Do I? Nope. So we'll turn them off. Never mind. I just realized that that's going to add a bunch of problems for no benefits. So they're enabled for the render. I'm going to come try to preview this. You won't have the hair, but we'll see what the lights kind of look like. And it'll give us just a very, very initial look at what it'll kind of look like. Again, I don't have the moon set up. I don't have any of that. So It'll be a little different than this, but let's just start a render and see what it looks like. So let's go cycles, render, 1% noise, 4,000 samples max. So that'll be fine. I'm going to get off of the render preview, and we're just going to F12 this and see what it looks like. Now, one thing I've noticed, and I'm not entirely sure why, it's probably loading all of the hair groups. I keep calling them hair, they're curves. So I wonder if maybe in Blender 4 that's been optimized more. I don't know for sure, but it takes a long time to start loading these frames. And I mean, it's not awful, but like 38, 39 seconds and we haven't even started to render yet. That's going to add a lot of render time. If I have like a, I don't know, a 2000 frame animation, that's going to take, even my farm, that's going to take a long time. But let's pull up Task Manager here too. And let's look at how this is using the PC. So processor is barely being used. GPU, we're using almost 16 gigabytes of VRAM. And I'll say that's mainly due to the hair on the body adds a ton. So like if I have multiple characters with hair, I don't know how I'll do it. I'll have to get creative with that. But yeah, 51 gigabytes of system RAM and 16 gigs of VRAM. So like having more characters is going to be an issue. So there's some things I'm going to have to plan to optimize. But let's close this task manager so we can see. Now, obviously, my lights are not set up. I'm going to have the fire going. I'm going to have the fog. But even now, this is already looking pretty cool. You can see how it's going to run the light coming through his hair. And really, I'll probably have him sitting in front, like toward us of the fire. So he'll be right around here and kind of looking toward the moon. But I think this is going to look pretty cool. I mean, look at the ground. Like, I'm not even too mad about our ground material here at the moment. I think that looks just fine. So, I actually have planned the first little animation I want to do. I want to model a like a little cooking spit here and have him cooking a turkey for like a little Thanksgiving joke. So that might be one that I try. He'll just be spinning the little thing. And I don't know if you guys have ever played the games, the Monster Hunter games from Capcom, but it's a little mini game in that where you cook the meat and there's a little song that plays and you have to time it right. And if you take it off at the right time, you get the best quality of steak. And I kind of want to do something like that where there's a little jingle that plays and then he gets all excited because the meat is perfect. So just trying to play on the Thanksgiving hype that will be this week. But yeah, I don't know. It looks cool. The other issue I see already is we're not even to 1,000 samples out of 4,000. So I think a lot of our problem, some of it is the grass, because every single blade of this grass is calculating the light passing through it. But also the hair, you can see where it's really shiny here. I have to make sure that there's enough roughness on the hair that it's not calculating so much light, because as cool as it will look, it's going to just kill the render times. But I mean, I've been blabbing for 4 minutes of this rendering and it's barely a quarter of the way done. So if the 4090 is going to run 15 minutes per frame, everything else is going to take like hours because I don't have more of these 4090s. So I'll have to optimize this, but I mean, look at the tree. Like that just is cool. And nothing's even set up properly yet. So I'm tempted to let this run, but I don't want to just sit and watch a render. So I don't know. What do you guys think? What ideas do you have for the actual animation or for the scene? So he'll have like a tent set up over to the side. He'll be having his little fire, that kind of stuff. But I mean, what else do you guys think is cool? I know at one point, you know, having this guy knocking over some Roman columns, that was the scene that I was going to do. So I can still do that one. Do some like particle destruction and stuff. Yeah, otherwise I'll start bringing in characters. If you saw the post I made a little while ago, I have a couple centaurs done that I got from Daz. I have a female one of this guy that I'll bring in eventually. She doesn't have hair yet, so I'll have to do that, but yep, lots to do. Man, we're just past halfway done rendering this. Yep, I think there's got to be a way to optimize the hair. I have a hard time believing that hair just has to take that long. So between all of the plants passing their light through and the hair, it's just brutal to render this. But it's really kind of cool to see how, like, the hair on his hands, you'll see through it. You know, it's just, I don't know, it's just really cool looking when it's done. I just can't believe it takes this long. The last one I ran, when we added all these hair groups to this guy, we had another one of those like 15-minute render times, and I thought it was just because it was a Daz scene, and I thought maybe their scene wasn't optimal at all. But really, I think it's just all of these objects use so much resource. I'm gonna have to go get that 192 gigabyte RAM kit here soon. I don't even know if they make a good one yet. Okay. Okay. All right. So the render's done. That took 7 minutes. So you got to figure something like a 3090 or 4070 is going to take this 15 minutes to render. And then all the other cards I have that are slower than that, I don't even know if they'll run because the VRAM, but I mean, look at the hair. Like, we're zoomed in pretty far. This isn't a high resolution image, but I mean, that just looks cool, man. He's not even set up to go the right way. But yeah, just look at that tree. It's just nice to have good assets. I don't make this good of scenery on my own, so it's really nice to be able to just go buy that. I mean, the fire ring with the sticks, that looks pretty cool. I'm pretty excited, guys. So I think what I'm going to do now, I'm going to get out of the camera. I might try to add some of that fog and just kind of start to see what it looks like. I'm going to also move the character to where I want him. So he's going to actually be like kind of off in this side maybe. Let's go back to our camera. Nope, I think I'll have him closer, so I'll move him X and then Y. And then maybe back to that way. Let's see how far he is. He's got to be able to reach the fire pit, so we want him about there maybe. I'll rotate him Z, so now he's facing it. Okay, so now I just will have to add some sort of a little log seat, and he'll be just kind of sitting here looking up at the moon. I'll probably move my camera up to something like this, so it kind of looks up more, and then I'll move these trees in from the side. Just see. Let's rotate that a little more, and then I'll try to grab this closer one here. I think that's it. Yeah. Maybe bring that, and then we'll rotate it in Z. I don't think we want branches obstructing where the character is, so something like this is probably better. And then I really want to be able to kind of see over his shoulder and up at the moon. So what I'll do is I'll select the camera, and we'll add some extra depth of field here. I'll probably set the character to the object. Oops. Go back to the camera. Turn on depth of field. Focus object will be character there. And let's start to look at this in render view. Okay. So we'll probably want just a little. We'll want a little more clarity further back. I am definitely not up to speed on camera settings yet. But I think with the fog, we're not going to have to worry about depth of field too much. So maybe I'll leave that at 2.8 for now. And then focal length. So basically what I'll do for this banner is I'll have this zoomed in pretty far, and the banner on the channel is really, really wide render. So I'll stretch this out to be whatever resolution they tell you for YouTube. But have him just kind of looking up into the fogginess. That'll be cool. So let's go back to solid view here, and I think I'm going to just start to add some like logs and stuff. Popo Ramos says, have you tried Turbo Render? It has a temporal rendering between frames, allows you to render at lower samples to speed things up. Are you rendering at 4K? Okay, so I have not tried that. Definitely tell me what or where that is. Is it an add-on or a software? Temporal denoise. Okay. This render that we just did, it was 7 minutes. This was 2560 by 1440p. So quite a bit below 4K actually. I think when I make my animations, they'll probably be 1080p for the most part. For that channel banner, the resolution is it's really wacky. It's like 3800 something by like 1152 or some weird number, just because it's such a stretched image. But rendering between frames, yeah, that would be awesome. So you're saying that you can basically render let's just say odd number frames, and then it uses an AI to build the frames in between. So it's basically like DLSS kind of for frame rendering and not for game. I know that AMD has said they have the ability to do that with their software. I just haven't seen it public. Where is that? Because I'd love to try that. Yeah, imagine that. You could basically render 12 frame per second animation and then just double the frame rate. Yeah, let me know where that is. I don't know if it's in Blender or not. But yeah, I'll definitely look into that. But yeah, let's maybe add just a generic like object here for him to sit on. Maybe I'll try one of these sticks. Or I guess it could just be another rock, couldn't it? That'd probably look even better. Let's just do that. Let's add a rock. Let's get his feet down on the ground so we know that he's in the right spot. So I'm just going to move him down a little bit till the feet clip through, just barely. So that'll get us close. I'm going to drag. Let's get maybe this long one. And then, probably sit on it this way. So let's maybe do rotate by Y. And then this way a little bit. Oh, that's too far away. or play around with cycles, rendering settings, number of bounces on light paths. It can significantly speed up. Yeah, and the night we built all these hair particles, some of the first are curves. I keep saying particles. I'm sorry, they're not anymore. They're curves. The night we built all of these, the renders took a long time, and I found that if I play with the roughness in the hair, just make the roughness a little bit higher, so less of the light gets into the hairs, because there's millions of hairs on the body. Just making it more rough, and yeah, taking down some light path, because you can play with all of these. Like I'll take the bounces down a lot. That can really add a lot of speed back that you would lose otherwise. So if you're going to sit at the fire, you're probably going to sit quite a bit closer. So I'll move this guy in more. I'll move this in more. And then that might actually have to come up, because I think it's somewhat hard to pose this guy's legs. All right, let's save this, because I'm feeling a crash. A crash is coming. Let's go to pose mode. And let's just try to sit this guy down here. Should work okay. I don't know how well the clothes will do. That'll be the biggest problem. Because, like, the clothes are from Daz. They're not really optimized for extreme poses. So, not sure. Let's see. These can go down a little. Let's rotate his legs out just a little. That'll kind of fix some of the crumpling of the clothing there. Bring his hands in. I don't know why he's so surprised. There we go. Probably just have him leaning on his hands or something. Have him on his knees maybe. Something like that. He's just kind of sitting there, chilling out. Not worried about fighting anybody at the moment. Let's see how that looks. Ah, the weight paint issue. We got some straggler vertices here. I had this issue the other night on this model too. The vertex groups for the mouth aren't catching the very center vertices on the model very well. So I'm gonna have to come fix that, but that's all right. We'll do that later. Although it is fairly distracting, but I'll fix that. So don't worry about that. Let's see what this looks like now. Other than his pseudo tongue sticking through his nose, let's see what this looks like. So he'll just kind of be hanging out, sitting there. I think for these renders, the clothes will look okay. It's just like in this area, it's bending up this part of the cloth really bad. I just probably need to play with how it's grouped to the body, but I've done that plenty, so I'll have to fix that. But basically, our camera's going to be probably somewhere in here. So the clothes on the front side aren't even going to matter for this exact render anyway. Actually, let's think about that. So that'll be the fire. So I even want to bring these trees in more. May as well work on this while we're sitting here. Yeah, I'm definitely new to like scene composition, and I know there's basically photography rules that apply, you know, that you should think about when you're setting up renders. So I'll have to learn all that as well, because I'm sure photographers out there would probably be screaming at me about how I'm setting the scene up right now. But yeah, something like that'll look cool. I think his rock can scale up a lot more. I don't think his butt's even sitting on the rock yet. And then this way I don't have to model some log. So we just saved like, I don't know, 25 minutes plus material work. Just move this up higher. Yeah, that'll work. Cool. And then I'll have the little fire going here. That's going to look pretty sweet. All right. Let's try to add some fog here. I'm going to move these over to the side more. I don't really need them at the moment. Save this one more time. Okay. Now for the fog, I think I probably don't need it to go over the entire area, so I'll just add a cube here, and we'll just start to scale it up, and we'll see how big we think we need it as we go. So I want the camera to be in the fog, I think. Scale it X, and then let's just move it X, because a lot of that's going to be outside the camera. All right, now I'm going to have to remember how to set up fog. Let's just call this fog. I want to say that we can just change this to a... It's not a translucent, is it? Let me think. I have to remember how to set up fog, you guys. It's been a long time. I know that my buddy Quasi has a good tutorial about fog that works for Eevee too. So I'll probably go look that up. Here we go, volume. That's why I couldn't remember. I need to add a volume shader. Volume scatter, there we go. And let's just see how awful this makes everything. Okay. I think this one needs to be a... volume scatter as well, maybe? Okay. Oh man, I'm gonna have to remember to do the fog. But basically, I think that's gonna be pretty much what we want. I need to go into... let's see, do I have my cube selected anyway? Yeah, there we go. .01. Yeah, so that'll start to be it. And I'll come back and add the noise for it and everything later. But yeah, I think for now, guys, I'm going to call it. I'm going to have to do some research on getting my fog set up and all that. But I mean, this thing's already looking pretty cool where it is. I have to tune some stuff. But yeah, watch for animation soon. It's going to be cool. I'm finally getting to the point where I'm prioritizing animating instead of just building characters and doing like random tutorials. I'll still do those too, but it's time to make something. So I'm going to start this render. If anyone's still here, feel free to hang out. I'm just going to see how this looks to start off. Actually, let's turn off the some of the things we got going here. I think the edge of our cube is causing a problem over there. Whoops. Let's see, the moon's going to have a little bit of a blue color to it. So the cool blue color of it mixed with the red from the fire should look really cool. I don't think I want this translucent. Maybe absorption. Undo a couple times here. All right. Well, it's starting to, that's getting there. I'll play around with it. Let's just start this thing and see what it looks like. And it'll give me a good point to jump off from, if you will. Anyways, yeah, so I'm gonna let this start. We'll see what it kind of looks like, and then I'll probably play with the fog a little bit over the next couple days. Maybe start adding some other scenery, but I might go live again a couple nights this week. I'm trying to push for that 4,000 hour number. I'm really close now, so I'll be streaming a lot, trying to make some good videos faster than normal. So watch for all that. But thanks to everybody who hears this and for being here. Papa Ramos shows up all the time. Mora VFX is in here a lot, and Edgar the Face is always talking to me. And Edgar helps me build some data management stuff that we're doing with testing data. So we'll have a form that you can fill with for Google, like a Google form basically, that if you want to submit some benchmarking data to put on the official list for our data set, then we'll have that set up pretty soon. So that'll be cool. But yeah, a lot of stuff coming up, guys. Thanks for being here. It means a lot. It's fun to actually finally be close to making something. So I think that's it for now. And I'll just I'll let this run a couple minutes. But yeah, let me know in the chat what else you think. One other thing I just noticed, I'm probably going to have to apply a bit of a smooth modifier to this clothing because I see it creates some interesting ripples. But also, I bet you the back of it is probably parented to the tail and stuff like that too. So I think that's another thing I'll have to work on. But starting to look really cool, guys. Man, these renders take forever though. Sheesh. Just an eighth of the way done now, and it's already been 3 minutes. I know that adding volume stuff is a big hit to performance as well, but I mean, we don't really even have actual fog. There's no direct lighting sources that are being calculated in here. It's just really heavy. So I'm going to pull up Task Manager again. I'm just curious. Yep, see the CPU just barely runs, which it shouldn't when you're rendering, but 5.2 to 5.3 gigahertz is really, really, really nice to have on the new 7950X. And the thing runs hot, and there's other issues with motherboards and stuff, but it's really fast. But yep, we're right there at 16 gigs of VRAM. Curious to see how that'll go up with better fog in there too. Close this up a little bit. There we go. Very cool though. All right, guys. What else? Any other thoughts? Otherwise, I'll probably end the stream here in just a second, and we'll touch base again here in the next day or two. One other tutorial that I'll do probably in between is I'll add the body hairs to the other Minotaur character I have, so you guys can see how to do that. I know somebody had asked for a separate tutorial. That's just a shorter video, so we'll do that. I got pretty good at that process now. But yeah, if nothing else, guys, that's it for now. Thanks for being here. It means a lot, and we'll talk soon. All right.